In this video, we're going to talk about another method of graphing. Now, in the previous video, we went over the idea of making a function table and then just plugging in values and then plotting those points, which wasn't too bad. But sometimes it's nice if we can make use of a structure. So this idea of slope-intercept form, you may have seen this in other classes before this, but it looks like this: y equals mx plus b. Or if you're using function notation, it would be f of x equals mx plus b. Okay. Right now, those are two kind of interchangeable things. Now, the idea behind this is that if your equation is in this format, where there's a number times x and then plus or minus another number, we can make use of this structure to make graphing very, very easy. Okay. The first thing you have to kind of know is what m and b stand for. And these are the key features if you're using this method, m and b. Okay. M, okay, that represents the slope. Okay. Or you can think of it like it's representing how steep the line is going to be. So it's steepness. Okay. Now, mathematically, any line can be broken down into two components, an up and down part and a left and right part. So when we talk about steepness, we usually refer to this fraction, refer to the term rise over run. Okay, and essentially what that means is we're looking at the up and down component over the left and right component. Okay, any line, any straight line can be broken down into those two pieces. How much is it going up and down? How much is it going left and right from point to point? Okay, and that's going to come in handy when we graph these. The second component that you want to make sure you're familiar with is the b value. Okay, in this equation, the b represents the y-intercept. Okay, and just like it sounds, the word intercept means it crosses. So this is the point at which your line crosses that y-axis, the up and down axis line. Okay, and the nice thing with this one is the only thing you have to remember is that the point that matters, it's always going to be 0, comma, whatever b is. So if b is 5, that point is going to be 0, comma 5. If it's -2, 0, comma -2. Okay? If you can find out these two things, m and b, graphing a line is actually pretty straightforward. It's not too difficult. Okay? The thing you want to make sure you remember is that the order with which you go, and you kind of use the letters to remember you, or to remind you, is I tell students that you begin with B. Oops. So begin with B, and then you move with M. Okay, so you start with B, and then you move with M. And the idea here is that all we really need is 2 points, right? 2 points, we can draw a straight line. Let's put a little note in here. Okay, we only need 2 points. Okay, because if we have 2 points, we can grab a ruler, we can draw a straight line. So the idea is that the B value gives us 1 point, and then the M is going to tell us how to move to our next point. And that's all we need to draw a line. Okay, so begin with B and move with M. Okay, let's go and take a look at an example. That way you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I might have to scroll back down to those in a second. Okay, so let's say the question is graph y is equal to 3x minus 2. Okay, and let's go and draw a standard size graph. And whenever I say a standard size graph, typically like a 5 by 5 is good enough. Remember, the nicer your graph is, the easier it is going to be to plot your points. Okay, so take some time, try to make sure your graph is as nice as possible. Probably even better than mine is. Okay, so that's a 5 by 5 graph. And then we can label our axis lines. So this is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. Sometimes I don't always do this, but it's a good habit to get into, just so you know which axis is which. Okay. All right. Now what we should do is we should look at our equation and determine, well, what is M and what is B? Because that's our two pieces, right? If we can figure out what those two things are, the graphing is going to be pretty easy. Okay. So in this question, the graph, or the M, it's always the part that's in front of the X. So here's our M value. So M is 3 in this question. Okay. Which means our B is right there. Keep in mind that negative goes with it. So our B value is -2. Okay, great. We have that information. Now we can kind of start to make our graph. Like I said above, we should begin with our B value. Let me scroll up to the top for a second. So there's our B value. Remember, our key point is 0, comma, whatever B is. Okay, so let's go back to this question. So our key point is going to be 0, comma, in this example, it's going to be 0, comma, -2. Okay. The nice thing about this method of graphing is that your first point will always be on that y-axis because it's the y-intercept. Okay, the b value should always be on that y-axis. So 0, comma, -2, that's 0 left and right, and then down 2. So it's right there. Okay, great. Again, we need one more point. Now, the idea is we're going to use our m value to tell us how to move to our next point. Okay, but here's something I want to point out. Notice in this question, m is 3. Now, if I scroll back up to the top, there's a key feature here. I'm going to go ahead and circle it. M, typically we want it to be a fraction, right? Rise over run, the up and down part over the left and right part, okay? So if our m value is not a fraction, we need to make it one. So right now, m is 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a 3 turn into a fraction, okay? And any number can become a fraction by putting it over 1. So 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1. Okay, great. Now again, we're using this concept of rise over run, or the up and down part over the left and right part. Now, in order to get this done correctly, you have to remember, like, so rise, it could be up or down, depending on the numbers, okay? In our example, our 3 is a positive 3. So positive is an up direction, okay? If it was negative, that would be going down. Same thing with the left and right. Positive would be right, and negative would be left. Okay, so looking at our fraction here, 3 over 1, those are both positive numbers. So what that's telling us to do is to go up 3 spaces and then right 1 space. Okay, so what we're going to do is from that first point, from that blue dot, so don't go to the middle, go to that blue dot. We're going to count up 3 spaces and then right 1 space. Okay, now I'm going to draw little dots on here so you can see how I'm counting, but typically you probably don't want to draw those little dots. Okay, so from this blue dot, I'm going to go count 1, 2, 3, then I'm going to go right 1 space. So this is going to be our second point. See how I counted up 3 spaces and then right 1 space from that first blue dot. Okay, and again, we only need 2 points. So that's all we need. Okay, so now we can just grab a ruler or just try to draw the best straight line by hand, making sure it goes through both points. Okay, and you usually want it to go across the whole graph. So again, it's not connecting the dots; it's drawing all the way across the graph. Okay, and that's it. That's essentially what you need to be able to do to graph it when it's in this format: mx plus b. Okay, begin with b, put the first dot, and then use m to count your spaces to your next dot, and then draw your line. Once you're used to it, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, let's try one more. I'm going to erase this just to save some space. And I'm going to draw it right next to this one. Okay, so let's do y is equal to -5 over 2x plus 5. Okay, let's go ahead and draw our graph. And again, a good standard size graph is 5 by 5. And we can always extend it if we need to. Okay, and then x-axis and y-axis. All right, and again, our goal is to identify, well, what is M and what is B, okay? I want to encourage you guys, if you want to try this out on your own, go ahead and pause the video at this point. Try it out. Don't be afraid to make a mistake, and then come back and press play, and we'll go through it. Okay, so talking about this question, let's identify M, right? So M is that fraction. Don't be scared because it's a fraction. The fact that it's a fraction is actually going to help us. Okay, so M is negative 5 over 2. Okay, and then B is 5. Okay, so again, we're going to begin with B. So our starting point, it's always going to be 0, comma B. In this case, 0, comma 5. So that's 0 left and right, up 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right here. Okay? All right. So now we have to take care of our M. Now the negative you need to be extra careful of. Okay? Now the way it's written right now, if you notice that, and see how that negative is kind of in the middle of the fraction? The way it's written right now, we don't know, like, is the negative being applied to the top number or the bottom number? Okay? The answer is that it doesn't really matter which one, but you should choose. Like, do you want to give it to the top or the bottom? Both of them are correct. But just to show you the difference, you could do this, negative 5 over 2, or you could do positive 5 over negative 2. Okay? Here's the reason why you need to choose. Both are correct. Okay? If you go with the first one, this one is saying to go down 5 spaces because it's negative, and then right 2 spaces because that's positive. All right, negative 5 over 2, that means down 5, right 2. Versus the other one, it's positive 5, so that's saying go up 5 spaces, and then negative 2 means go left 2 spaces. Okay, now both of those will give you the correct answer, because if you actually did both of them, it would still give you the same line. Okay, but now you get a choice. Okay, if you went with this one right here, okay, if you look at the graph, if we're starting at that blue dot and it says to go up 5 spaces, see how that would go off our graph? So maybe that's not the best one to choose for this question, right? So let's go with the first one we went with. Let me do it in green. So let's say we go with this one, okay? This one is saying from that blue dot, we go down 5 spaces and then right 2 spaces. So again, I want to put little dots so you can see. So from that blue dot, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back down to the center point, and then going right 2 spaces. 1, 2. So there's our second point. Okay. You could have gone with the other one. You could have gone with this one, but you just have to make a bigger graph. Okay. If you go up 5 spaces and left 2, you'll end up with a point, just to kind of show you the idea. It would be somewhere up here, but see how that's in the same kind of line? Okay, so it would work. You just need a bigger graph. Okay. Again, we only need 2 points. So once you have your 2 points, draw your line, and then we're done. Okay. So again, the two things I identify are B and M.